The moment these black belts laughed at the quiet girl in the corner, they had no idea they were about to witness a 12-year-old rewrite the rules of the gym forever. When Marcus Steele, a cocky black belt instructor at Iron Fist Jiu-Jitsu Academy, noticed 12-year-old Elise Bauer sitting quietly in the corner, he smirked. This one looks like she could use a lesson, already imagining the humiliation he would inflict. What began as a cruel, public challenge quickly spiraled into a moment no one in the gym would ever forget. In a matter of 2 minutes, Elise would upend his arrogance, reveal a legendary family legacy, and teach a lesson in discipline and respect. Before we dive in, if you like this kind of stories of overcoming adversity and justice, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. Now let's jump back in. Enjoy the story. The quietest soul often carries the loudest legacy. The dojo smelled faintly of disinfectant and sweat, the kind that clung to old mats and wooden walls. Fluorescent lights hummed above, casting a pale glow over polished trophies that lined the shelves. A clock ticked steadily on the far wall, marking the rhythm of another ordinary afternoon. On the side bench, 12-year-old Elise Bauer sat in her blue GI. The fabric looked fresh, folded neatly across her shoulders. She held a book, its spine worn, corners frayed. Her small fingers traced each line carefully, though her eyes didn't seem fixed on the words. She had a habit of withdrawing into herself, like water settling into stone. Across the room, her guardian, Anna Bauer, Elise's aunt, a woman of 48, stood at the reception desk. She wore a plain white blouse tucked into gray slacks, her reading glasses balanced low on her nose. A clipboard rested in her hand, invoices clipped in a neat stack. Anna's tone with the receptionist was brisk, practical, softened only when she glanced back at Elise. "Stay put for a while, dear," Anna called, her voice carrying warmth over the low murmur of the room. "I'll only be a few minutes." Elise looked up, gave a small nod, and lowered her gaze again. Her pale blonde hair, tied back in a simple braid, slipped against the collar of her GI. Around her, older boys laughed and sparred in mock grips, the thud of bare feet on mat echoing through the air. Their voices rose in bursts of challenge and pride. Elise stayed quiet, tucked into her corner of stillness. An elderly man mopped the hallway just outside, his bucket sloshing with each movement. Parents gathered near the glass window, chatting about schedules, tournaments, and college hopes. Their words carried an undercurrent of competition Elise never seemed to share. She clutched her book tighter when the laughter grew louder on the mat. One boy tripped, and another shouted in victory. She remained where she was, small and almost invisible in the bustle of the dojo. Anna, finishing her discussion, leaned briefly on the counter. She adjusted her glasses, then looked toward Elise once more. "Wait here, quietly," she reminded, her words firm yet affectionate. Elise gave another soft nod, slipping further into her seat. The bench creaked beneath her slight frame. And so she sat, still, apart, a quiet figure against the noisy backdrop of the class. On the mat, the class gathered in neat rows. At the front stood instructor Marcus Steele, 42, his black GI trimmed with red stitching. Broad-shouldered, square-jawed, his presence filled the room with ease. When he spoke, his voice cut through chatter like a polished blade. "Focus, all of you," Marcus commanded, snapping his fingers once. The room hushed instantly. He moved with the calm certainty of a man used to being obeyed. His demonstration began with a favored student, Liam Carter, 15, tall for his age, muscles already defined. Liam's GI shimmered faintly with brand logos stitched along the sleeves. His father, Richard Carter, a man in a tailored navy blazer, watched proudly from the sideline, arms crossed, nodding with every move his son made. Marcus clasped Liam's wrist, demonstrated a throw, and let him roll neatly across the mat. "See that?" Marcus announced, lifting Liam's arm in triumph. "Balance, precision, confidence. That is what skill looks like." His words carried approval like a spotlight, warming the boy who basked in it. Parents along the glass smiled at Richard, offering polite congratulations. Richard returned each one with a small tilt of his chin, a man certain of his son's bright future. Meanwhile, Marcus leaned closer to Liam, his voice just loud enough for the others to hear. "Perfect work. No hesitation. Your discipline is rare. The praise was rich, drawn out, the kind that plants envy in other students' hearts. He stepped back, folding his arms, letting the silence stretch. The class shifted uneasily, each student hoping for similar recognition, but only Liam received the glow. Richard clapped once, sharp and proud, as though his son's triumph reflected his own. Marcus turned to the rest of the room, his voice swelling again. This is what separates the dreamers from the doers. Many of you think strength comes from reading or watching, but no, it is forged here, on the mat, through sweat, through sacrifice. His dark eyes swept across the gathered faces. True skill is not a story. It is blood, breath, and bruises. The words lingered in the room, heavy and deliberate. Children shifted under his gaze. Parents leaned in, eager to absorb the performance. Marcus straightened his back, the corners of his mouth lifting in satisfaction. Then, with a small clap of his hands, he prepared to show more, his energy brimming with the thrill of his own authority. Marcus let his eyes drift across the rows. The students held their breath, waiting to be chosen. His lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer as he stopped in front of David Moreno, 14, a thin boy with a plain white GI. It seemed slightly frayed. "David," Marcus called. "Stand up." The boy obeyed quickly, glancing toward his mother, who sat nervously in the corner. She wore a faded sweater, hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes betraying both pride and worry. Marcus circled David slowly. "Show me your stance," he ordered. David spread his feet, knees bent, arms raised, but his shoulders slouched. "Pathetic," Marcus barked, his voice echoing against the walls. The class chuckled uneasily. He pushed David's shoulder, causing him to stumble backward. "See this? Weak. Loose. No control." David flushed red, his chin dropping. His mother straightened in her seat, forcing a smile that faltered almost instantly. She smoothed her sweater, trying to hide the tremor in her hands. Marcus gestured at Liam, who stood proudly. "Compare," he said, the word sharp as glass. Liam stepped into stance, strong, confident. "This is skill. This is discipline. Not this." His hand sliced through the air toward David with deliberate cruelty. The other students shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between David and the floor. A few parents looked away, lips pressed tight. David tried again, tightening his posture, but Marcus shook his head. "No, you are wasting everyone's time. If you cannot stand, how will you ever fight?" The sting in the boy's eyes was visible, a mix of shame and helplessness. His mother pressed her lips together, tears threatening. She clutched her worn purse to her chest, as though holding him from afar. Silence filled the space, heavy, suffocating. Marcus turned away, satisfied with the demonstration of failure. From the bench, Elise's small hand tightened around her book. Her knuckles whitened as she pressed the cover against her chest. The laughter and whispers around her faded into a dull roar. Her braid brushed her shoulder as she leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on David. For the first time that evening, something in her stillness shifted. At the far edge of the room, Mr. Harold Price, 68, the janitor, paused with his mop. His back bent from years of work, his shirt tucked into worn khaki trousers. He leaned on the handle, eyes narrowing. He had seen this pattern before, Marcus lifting one child high only by pressing another into the ground. Price's lips pressed into a thin line. He muttered under his breath, though no one heard. Same tricks, different faces. Around the benches, quiet whispers stirred. Two mothers leaned toward each other. "He's too harsh," one murmured. "But who would dare speak against him?" The other replied, glancing nervously at Marcus's broad shoulders. A father near the window shifted uneasily, tugging at his watchband. His son sat on the mat, staring at his feet. Marcus's head turned sharply. His hearing was quick, honed like a blade. The whispers died at once. He let the silence hang, his dark eyes sweeping over the room, daring anyone to meet them. The mop squeaked softly as Mr. Price dipped it back into the bucket, pretending to work. But his gaze lingered. He had seen instructors come and go, but Marcus's cruelty gnawed at him. Across the row of students, Liam grinned, whispering to a friend. David remained on his knees, shoulders hunched, trying to disappear. His mother looked at her hands, blinking hard, unwilling to meet her son's eyes. The hush in the room thickened. Parents avoided speaking. Children kept still, Fear crept like a fog, quiet but suffocating. Marcus finally broke the stillness with a slow, deliberate breath. His lips curved into a small smile, not warm, but calculating. He tapped his foot on the mat, once, twice, as though marking a rhythm. Somewhere in the back, a water bottle rolled off a bench and clattered to the floor. The sound startled more than one child, but Marcus did not flinch. Instead, he let the noise fade, then began to walk again, measured, steady steps across the mat. His eyes scanned for another opportunity, for a new example, a fresh way to remind the room who held the power. And then his gaze stopped. Marcus's gaze fixed on Elise. She sat still on the bench, blue GI neatly folded across her small frame, book clutched close. Her blonde braid gleamed under the overhead lights. She looked almost fragile, like a porcelain figure placed in the wrong room. Marcus's lips curled into a slow smile. It wasn't kind. It was the smile of a man who saw prey. He paced a step closer, folding his arms. Perfect, he thought. Small, quiet, harmless. The ideal prop for a lesson about reality versus dreams. He raised his voice, loud enough for the whole room. Sometimes, people believe that knowledge on a page, or stories told at home, make them strong. He let the words hang, his eyes never leaving Elise. But skill is earned here, on the mat. Not in silence. Not in books. Liam smirked. Other students shifted uneasily, glancing toward Elise. Parents craned their necks, curious. Marcus tilted his head, studying her like a hawk. The hush grew sharper. Even Mr. Price paused, mop in hand, sensing the shift. Inside, Marcus savored the thought. This would be easy. A small child who couldn't refuse without looking weak, yet couldn't succeed against him. His demonstration would cement his control. He clapped his hands together suddenly, the sound cracking through the air. Everyone, gather around. His voice boomed, commanding. Students scrambled, forming a loose circle around the center mat. Parents pressed closer to the glass, whispers rising. Elise glanced up at last. Her blue eyes were calm, though her fingers pressed tight against the book's cover. She felt the weight of every stare on her. Marcus spread his arms theatrically. Today, we will see the difference between wishing and doing, between imagination and truth. His smile sharpened, and we will all learn from it. His gaze never wavered from Elise as he spoke. The circle tightened. The air grew thick. Elise remained where she sat, small and unmoving, but no longer invisible. Knowledge, he declared, sweeping a hand toward the benches, is not strength. Stories, books, daydreams, none of these will save you when it matters. He began pacing through the circle of children, each step measured, heavy. His bare feet pressed into the mat with certainty, the faint squeak punctuating his words. The room had grown still, the playful chatter from earlier vanished. Even the hum of the overhead lights seemed louder, more oppressive. Parents leaned forward against the glass, sensing something unusual. As Marcus spoke, his eyes returned to Elise. She sat motionless, the book balanced against her lap. Her braid slipped forward over her shoulder. Her hands did not tremble, though the book's spine bent slightly under her grip. Marcus gestured to Liam again, his favorite student. You see strength there, he said, his tone swelling. Hours of practice. Discipline. Effort. That is real. He turned, eyes narrowing on Elise. But sitting in silence? Pretending that reading makes you a fighter? That is nothing. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. Detective Alan Reeves, 55, broad-shouldered and dressed in a brown sports coat, happened to be there watching his nephew train. His sharp eyes narrowed. He had seen men like Marcus before, men who loved the stage more than the truth. Nearby, a middle school teacher, Mrs. Fowler, 43, whispered under her breath. He's doing it again. Picking the quietest one. The parent beside her shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Elise finally lifted her gaze. Her blue eyes met Marcus's across the circle. She did not move, did not speak, but the slight turn of her head showed she had felt the shift in the room. Marcus spread his arms, smiling as though bestowing a gift. His voice softened into mock sweetness. Elise, isn't it? Come now. We'll make a lesson of it. Show everyone what you've learned from your little books. The air thickened with uneasy silence. Students' eyes darted to her, some pitying, some curious. Liam grinned, eager to see the spectacle. Stand up, Marcus called, his tone dripping false friendliness. His voice wrapped around her name like a noose. Don't be shy. Show us. And with that, Elise was no longer hidden. She had become the center of every gaze in the room. Marcus waited, arms folded, the small smile never leaving his face. The circle of students grew restless. The sound of bare feet shifting against the mat whispered through the silence. Anna, Elise's aunt, realized too late what was happening. She rose quickly from the reception desk, her clipboard clattering against the counter. "Excuse me," she called, her voice tense. "This is unnecessary. She's only a child." Parents turned their heads, but no one moved to support her. A few even stepped sideways, forming a wall that blocked her path to Elise. Not deliberate, perhaps, but no less effective. The gathering itself had become a barrier. "Come now," Marcus said smoothly, ignoring Anna entirely. "It's harmless. A little demonstration. The best way to learn." Anna's voice sharpened. "She is not part of this class." "Every lesson," Marcus replied, his tone hardening, "belongs to the whole room." Elise glanced toward her aunt. Their eyes met briefly. Anna's lips pressed tight, a silent plea. But Elise understood something deeper in that look: love, fear, and the weight of helplessness. A boy in the circle, younger than the rest, whispered, "You don't have to." His words were swallowed quickly by the tension, but Elise heard them. Slowly, deliberately, she closed her book. The sound of the cover snapping shut echoed louder than it should have in the quiet room. She set it beside her on the bench, smoothed the fabric of her GI, and rose to her feet. The circle widened slightly to make room. Elise walked forward with measured steps, her small frame swallowed by the open space of the mat. The hum of the lights above seemed to grow louder with each step. She stopped in the center, facing Marcus. Her hands hung loosely at her sides. Her expression gave away nothing. From the sidelines, Anna pressed both palms flat against the counter, her knuckles white. "Please," she whispered, unheard in the crowd. Elise stood waiting, silent, swallowed by the moment, David against Goliath. Marcus adjusted the belt at his waist, smiling broadly, a performer before his audience. A door creaked open at the back. Mr. Keller, the gym owner, 61, stepped out of his office. He wore a neatly pressed polo tucked into slacks, clipboard under his arm. His thinning gray hair framed a face marked with worry lines. He paused, frowning as he took in the unusual silence. "What's going on here?" Keller asked, his voice sharp but uncertain. His eyes landed on Marcus and then on Elise, small, alone in the middle of the mat. Marcus's smile widened, instantly disarming. "Just a friendly demonstration," he said smoothly, spreading his arms as if welcoming scrutiny. "No harm. The students learn best by seeing what works and what doesn't." Keller hesitated. His gaze flicked toward Anna, who was standing rigid at the counter. She gestured quickly, her voice rising. "Stop this now. She's not part of this class." Parents near Keller shifted, murmuring among themselves. One father cleared his throat, but fell silent when Marcus's eyes swept in his direction. Marcus chuckled softly, clapping his hands once. "It's nothing dangerous, I assure you. The girl will see how true skill is different from imagination. That's all. An important lesson." Keller's jaw tightened. He looked at Elise, then at the crowd pressing closer to the glass. He knew the situation was wrong, but Marcus had been the gym's star attraction for years. His classes filled the room. Parents praised his results. Revenue depended on him. He tried again, softer this time. "Perhaps another day. The girl, she doesn't look ready." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "With respect, sir, the children are ready only when challenged. If we shelter them, we do them no favors. Surely you agree?" His words came smooth as oil, loud enough for every parent to hear. Keller faltered. His lips parted, but no words came. At last, he sighed and stepped aside, murmuring, "Keep it safe, Marcus." Anna's voice broke. "Safe? This isn't safe." But Keller didn't answer. He turned and walked slowly back toward his office, shoulders heavy, head bowed. Marcus's grin sharpened. The path was clear. Elise remained in the circle, utterly alone. Marcus stepped forward with theatrical confidence. He loosened his shoulders, rolled his neck, and then dropped into a deep fighting stance. His black GI tightened across his chest as his arms extended. He moved like a predator putting on a show. The children gasped and murmured. Some giggled nervously. A few looked at Elise with pity. Others, Liam among them, washed with smirking anticipation. Anna pressed against the edge of the crowd, her voice caught in her throat. "Elise," she whispered, her hands trembling at her sides. But her words didn't carry far enough. The room itself seemed to hold its breath. The ticking clock on the far wall grew louder. Even the mop bucket in the corner stood still, forgotten by Mr. Price, who leaned heavily on his mop handle, eyes locked on the mat. Marcus circled Elise slowly, his bare feet gliding over the floor. He raised his hands higher, exaggerated, mocking the seriousness of the stance. His movements were theatrical, designed to draw laughs, not respect. Elise did not mirror him. She remained perfectly upright, arms loose at her sides, her breathing steady and slow. She seemed as still as stone. Marcus barked suddenly, the sound sharp as a whip. "Show us something." His voice boomed through the gym. "Come on, little one. Don't just stand there. Pretend your book has taught you how to fight." The words drew laughter from a few older boys. Parents behind the glass winced, but said nothing. The power in Marcus's tone dared anyone to speak. Elise blinked once, calm, her blue eyes fixed somewhere between Marcus's hands and his chest. Her braid slipped against her shoulder, but otherwise she didn't move. Marcus spread his arms wide, taunting. "You see? Nothing. No courage. No skill. Only silence." He looked toward the crowd with a self-satisfied grin. This is the difference between wishing and doing. The tension thickened. Every gaze remained fixed on Elise. The first strike was coming. Marcus stepped closer, his black GI whispering against the mat. His eyes glinted, calculating, as he lifted his fist in a precise, sharp arc. The strike was fast, designed to intimidate. A blow meant to skim past Elise's face, to elicit flinch, fear, compliance. The circle of children tensed. Liam leaned forward, eager, anticipating the humiliation. Parents behind the glass gasped softly, some placing hands over their mouths. Even Anna pressed both palms against her lips, silent but pleading. Elise did not flinch. Time seemed to stretch for a heartbeat. Her bare feet remained rooted lightly on the mat, weight balanced evenly. Then, in a movement so smooth it almost seemed unreal, her body shifted. A single, flowing motion that carried no hesitation, no wasted energy. She slid the fist by a fraction of an inch, evading the strike by the slimmest margin, yet the motion carried an elegance that spoke of mastery. Marcus froze mid-motion, the motion of his arms stuttering, unplanned. His lips parted, a low murmur escaping him. He muttered under his breath, disbelief threading his tone. The children blinked, confusion flashing in their eyes. Liam's grin faltered, replaced by a frown. Even some of the boldest older students exchanged uncertain glances. Mr. Price, the janitor, leaning heavily on his mop, dropped it softly to the floor. His knuckles rapped the handle once in muted surprise. The movement, the style, was unmistakable. Classical, precise, long forgotten. His lips pressed into a thin line. Recognition lit his eyes. The silence in the room thickened. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed sharper, every footstep and shifting weight amplified in the tense stillness. Parents murmured softly to themselves, eyes darting between Marcus and Elise. Some started leaning closer, sensing the shift in the narrative. Marcus blinked, his confidence faltering. He had expected compliance, a small, nervous child swallowed by the moment. Instead, Elise's stance, her measured, flowing motion, suggested something else entirely. She was not naive. She was not fragile. The air in the gym grew electric with unspoken realization. Whispered gasps tickled the edges of the silence. Marcus muttered again, almost to himself, "Impossible." Elise remained perfectly still after her movement, her expression unreadable, breathing slow and steady, hands at her sides. Calm, silent, watching, waiting. The first act of humiliation had failed. The crowd felt it. The story had begun to turn. Marcus's jaw tightened. His confidence, once a solid wall, wavered now. The evasion, so fluid, so precise, had rattled him in a way he did not expect. He tried to mask it with a scoff, stepping back, flexing his arms. "Luck," he muttered, voice sharp, almost a command to convince himself. It was luck. A fluke. The children watched, wide-eyed. Liam, standing closest to Marcus, frowned openly. "That wasn't luck," he muttered under his breath. Marcus squared himself again, preparing another strike. This time it was wider, more aggressive, a sweeping motion meant to dominate and intimidate. The mat seemed smaller with each step he took. Elise's blue eyes followed him calmly. Her breathing remained steady. Her feet shifted just slightly, enough to maintain perfect balance, and she moved with liquid grace around his strike. Once more, the blow passed harmlessly by her. The room gasped audibly. Some parents leaned forward, gripping the glass railing. The whispers swelled. "Did you see that?" She moved like a professional. Impossible for a child. Mr. Price, the janitor, leaned heavily on his mop, eyes wide with recognition. He whispered to himself, voice low but audible only to him. Classical style. Bauer lineage. His mind pieced it together. The precision, the timing, the economy of motion. Even Liam's face turned pale. He shook his head in disbelief. She's not just reading those books. Marcus's lips tightened, color draining slightly from his face. The mask of authority he wore for so long began to crack. His movements became erratic, defensive. He barked, voice rising in anger, frustration seeping through every word. "Stop playing games," he snarled, bare feet shifting unevenly. The confidence he had carried into the circle now slipped like sand through fingers. Elise remained still, composed, observing him as though she were studying a chess opponent about to make a fatal blunder. Her calmness, her silence, amplified the tension in the room. Parents leaned toward one another, whispers mixing with awe. The children froze, understanding instinctively that something monumental was unfolding. Marcus's authority, the aura of dominance he had wielded for years, was beginning to collapse in real time. The first real crack in his armor had appeared, and Elise, silent and small, stood at the center, the eye of the storm. Marcus's chest rose and fell in sharp, uneven breaths. He glared at Elise, expecting fear, hesitation, maybe even tears. None came. Then, for the first time since the confrontation began, Elise spoke. Her voice was calm, steady, clear. "Why would I fight you?" she asked, almost softly. Yet every word cut through the tension like a knife. The circle of students froze. Parents leaned closer to the glass. Even Liam's mouth fell open. Marcus blinked, momentarily speechless. "I don't need to prove strength," Elise continued, her blue eyes steady on Marcus. "You target children because it makes you feel important. But it isn't strength. It's cruelty." Her words hung in the air, echoing off the walls. She did not yell. She did not rage. There was no dramatic flourish, only truth, quiet and undeniable. The murmurs began almost imperceptibly at first. Then, one parent whispered, "She's right." Another nodded subtly. Children glanced at each other, realization dawning. Even Liam's confident posture faltered. Marcus's lips parted, as though to respond, but no words emerged. His face went pale under the overhead lights. Anger flickered in his eyes, but it was accompanied by something he had not anticipated, doubt. Anna pressed her hand over her mouth, a silent exhale of relief. Mr. Price's hands gripped his mop handle tightly. He nodded slowly, recognition in his eyes. The whispers grew louder. "He's a bully," one parent said. "I knew it," another added. Marcus's throat worked. He opened his mouth again, but his usual sharp, commanding tone was gone. The room no longer feared him. It watched, measured, critical. Elise did not advance or step back. She stood her ground, small yet immovable, the quiet authority of truth radiating from her posture. "Your lessons are not lessons," she said simply. "They are excuses to make others feel weak so you feel strong. That is not skill. That is not respect. That is fear." Gasps and murmurs ran through the room. The parents behind the glass exchanged glances of understanding. The children's eyes widened, absorbing the revelation. Marcus's confident facade crumbled completely. He had expected to dominate, to humiliate, to assert power. Instead, he found himself exposed before an entire gym, challenged not by strength, but by integrity. And in that quiet, unassuming way, Elise had taken control. Elise's calm blue eyes never wavered from Marcus, yet a flicker of something deeper appeared. Heritage, history, pride. She tilted her head slightly. "You don't know who my father was," she said, her voice steady, almost detached. The words landed like stones across the silent room. Marcus's brow furrowed. "Your father?" he asked, disbelief threading every syllable. Detective Alan Reeves, observing from the side, narrowed his eyes. His hand moved slowly to his pocket, pulling out his phone. He typed quickly, suspicion peaked. Mr. Price, the janitor, straightened slightly, his eyes widening. Recognition bloomed across his lined face. The fluidity, the precision, the classical movements, they were no accident. Elise continued, her tone neutral, revealing only enough to intrigue. My father's name is Eric Bauer. You may have heard of him. The mention of the name caused a ripple through the gym. Parents murmured softly, puzzled, intrigued. Some leaned forward on their knees, trying to catch more. Detective Reeves' fingers scrolled rapidly, landing on a biography. World champion, he muttered under his breath. Olympic medalist, multiple international titles. His eyes scanned quickly, absorbing the evidence. Eric Bauer, yes. That's him. Mr. Price's knuckles pressed against the mop handle. That's why she moves like that, he whispered to himself. Legacy in her veins. Discipline passed down. Technique carved into her bones. Marcus laughed, sharp and incredulous. So what? You're a child. Even if your father was some champion, it changes nothing here. His tone faltered slightly, betraying the cracks forming in his confidence. Elise lifted her chin just a fraction. It changes everything, she said simply. Because I carry what he taught me, and what my mother continued after he was gone. The detective, now reading aloud, detailed Eric Bauer's accomplishments. Olympic medalist, world champion, coach of national teams, a name whispered in respect across continents. The gym, once dominated by Marcus's authority, went utterly silent. Parents, children, even Marcus himself felt the weight of the revelation. The air was heavy with awe and disbelief. Marcus's face drained of color. His previous theatrics, his control, his mockery, all seemed meaningless now in the shadow of history, skill, and quiet mastery embodied by a 12-year-old girl. Elise stood poised, small yet monumental, carrying the weight of a legacy few could ever dream to understand. The room held its breath, waiting for what came next. Marcus's eyes blazed, a mixture of anger, disbelief, and humiliation. His hands clenched into fists. For the first time, his arrogance faltered completely. He lunged forward, a genuine strike this time, intent sharp and unrestrained. The gym's atmosphere shifted instantly. Every student froze mid-step, parents leaned closer to the glass, and even Mr. Price's mop paused in midair. The anticipation was electric. Elise's feet shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, but with perfect timing. She didn't raise her hands in defense. She didn't flinch. She allowed Marcus's momentum to carry him forward. In one seamless, flowing motion, she stepped aside, guiding his weight with the merest touch of her forearm against his upper arm. His attack, intended to dominate and intimidate, became the instrument of his own defeat. Marcus stumbled, arms flailing briefly before Elise's careful redirection guided him into a controlled fall. He crashed against an equipment rack with a loud, echoing thud. Mats rattled. A stack of foam pads teetered and fell. The gym fell utterly silent. Elise remained standing, calm, breathing steady. Not a bead of sweat betrayed the effort of her movements. Her braid swung gently against her shoulder. She had done nothing violent. She had only applied skill, control, and understanding of leverage passed down through generations. The children gasped, some stepping back in awe. Liam's mouth hung open, disbelief painted across his face. Parents exchanged stunned glances. Detective Reeves pressed his hand over his mouth, whispering, "Incredible, she didn't strike him once, and he's down." Mr. Price lowered his mop slowly, a quiet nod to the perfection of what he had just witnessed. Even Anna, pale and tense moments ago, pressed her hands to her lips, eyes wide with pride. Marcus lay sprawled on the floor, chest heaving, eyes wide. His face flushed from exertion and shock. The reality of the reversal hit him. His aggression had been turned against him, not through strength, but through mastery. Elise stepped lightly toward him, her blue GI brushing softly against her legs. She extended her hand, not in triumph, but in quiet concern. "Are you hurt?" she asked simply. Her voice was calm, almost maternal, contrasting sharply with the chaos that had just unfolded. The room held its breath. The defeated man on the floor, the child in blue, and the entire gym seemed to pause in recognition. Authority and intimidation were no match for skill, discipline, and composure. In that moment, victory had been claimed, not with pride or fury, but with restraint and quiet mastery. Marcus lay sprawled, chest rising and falling rapidly, face pale and sweat-matted hair plastered to his forehead. His confidence, once a wall, had crumbled entirely. Fear flickered in his eyes, brief, raw, and undeniable. Elise stepped closer, slow and deliberate. She did not smile, nor did she boast. Instead, she extended her small hand toward him. Her blue eye swayed slightly as she held out her palm, calm and composed. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly, her voice carrying more authority than any shout. Her question was gentle, but it bore the weight of moral certainty. Marcus's lips parted, but he could not respond immediately. He stared at the hand, at the small figure of the girl who had just bested him without striking a single blow. His ego, fragile and wounded, struggled to assemble words. Parents and children began to murmur, slowly, softly at first, then growing louder. "Did you see that?" one father whispered to his wife. "She didn't even hit him, and he's down." Mr. Price, the janitor, leaned on his mop, nodding slightly. "Perfect control," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "No wasted effort. Discipline, timing, legacy." Detective Reeves stepped forward cautiously, shaking his head in disbelief. "I've seen a lot," he said softly, voice carrying over the quiet crowd. "But nothing like that. She's incredible." Even Liam, the favored student, stood frozen, mouth slightly open. He glanced between Elise and Marcus, realization dawning slowly. The hierarchy he had once admired now felt hollow, overturned. Anna, pale but relieved, let out a soft breath. She glanced at Elise, eyes glistening. You handled that perfectly," she whispered, almost to herself. Marcus, finally finding a voice, rasped, I'm fine." His pride had been shattered. He flinched slightly as Elise gently helped him to his feet, guiding him upright with a firm yet considerate grip. The crowd remained still, watching the quiet act of compassion unfold. Elise's gesture, simple and unassuming, had not only demonstrated skill, but character. She had claimed victory morally as well as physically. As Marcus steadied himself, accepting the offered hand, the room seemed to exhale collectively. Awe, relief, and a dawning respect filled the air. Elise had shown them something greater than strength, restraint, grace, and the courage to rise above cruelty. The moment lingered. The gym had witnessed more than a confrontation. It had witnessed a transformation in understanding and in respect. Marcus, still recovering from his fall, sat on the edge of the mat, chest heaving, while Elise's gaze swept across the circle of students and parents. Detective Reeves, kneeling slightly to get a closer look, finally broke the silence. How did you do that?" he asked, voice low but full of genuine wonder. "You didn't strike him, yet he's down. How is that possible?" Elise's blue eyes met his. She did not smile, though her expression carried calm assurance. "Strength isn't about proving you can overpower someone," she said quietly. Her voice, though soft, carried a resonance that drew attention from every corner of the gym. "It's about knowing yourself and knowing how to protect others. The stronger you are inside, the less you need to strike outwardly." Mr. Price nodded slowly from the corner. "That's right," he whispered, almost to himself. "Control, discipline, power used with intention." Anna stepped closer, brushing a loose strand of blonde hair from Elise's face. Her voice carried warmth tinged with pride. "Your father taught you well," she said. "And after he passed, your mother continued his lessons. That discipline, that quiet mastery, it comes from years of patient training." Elise shifted slightly, standing tall in her blue eye. "He trained me to respect strength," she said, "to understand its weight, to know that real power comes not from fear, but from self-discipline, and from protecting those who cannot defend themselves." Detective Reeves, frowning with concentration, typed quickly on his phone, confirming the details of Elise Bauer's legendary career. "I see now," he murmured. "This isn't just talent. This is a legacy." Marcus, still catching his breath, muttered under his voice, almost to himself, "I've been doing it all wrong." His eyes flickered with something unfamiliar, self-doubt. For the first time, he seemed to understand that strength without wisdom was hollow, and intimidation without discipline was fragile. Elise's gaze returned to the crowd of children and parents. Martial arts, she continued, voice gentle but firm, is about protection, not pride. It's about lifting others, not lowering them. Anyone can strike, but not everyone can stand, calm and silent, while doing the right thing. The parents whispered among themselves, nodding. Children glanced at each other, absorbing the lesson without words. Even Marcus, humbled and quiet, seemed to recognize the magnitude of what he had witnessed. In that moment, the philosophy of strength was clear. True power was not measured by dominance, but by restraint, wisdom, and the courage to act with integrity. 2 days later, sunlight streamed through the office windows of the gym. The room smelled faintly of cleaning supplies and polished wood. Elise sat beside her aunt, Anna, on a leather sofa, her blue GI neatly folded over her knees. Across the desk, Mr. Keller, the gym owner, shuffled papers nervously. His fingers tapped a rhythm on the polished surface. Detective Reeves stood to one side, observing quietly, his notebook in hand. "Here's the situation," Keller began, voice tense. "The complaints from parents, the videos from class, the fallout from Marcus's behavior. Everything has reached a point where change is necessary. I didn't act fast enough before. That's on me." Elise's expression remained calm. She nodded slightly, her eyes steady. Keller continued, glancing at the detective for reassurance. "I've been thinking about the youth program. Marcus can no longer lead. It's clear the environment needs guidance, proper discipline, and a focus on the philosophy of strength, not intimidation." Detective Reeves cleared his throat. "You saw her demonstration. Elise has not only the skill, but the temperament. She understands what the training is meant to instill: discipline, self-control, respect. She embodies the values the program should teach." Keller looked down at the folder on his desk, flipping it open. Inside were letters from parents, requests, and petitions. Their handwriting neat or hurried, all spoke the same message. They wanted their children to learn under Elise's guidance. Anna's hand rested lightly on Elise's shoulder. "She's ready," Anna said softly. "She's been ready all along. It's just a matter of trusting her." Keller's eyes scanned the pages, then lifted to Elise. "I want you and your aunt to take over the youth program," he said finally. "Not just temporarily. I want a full transition. These children, they need someone like you." Elise's gaze swept the room. She felt the weight of responsibility settle over her small frame. She did not flinch. Her voice, calm and sure, carried across the office. "We'll do it," she said. The detective allowed himself a small, approving nod. Keller exhaled slowly, a mixture of relief and apprehension in his expression. He carefully placed the folder back on the desk. Outside, the gym buzzed with normal activity, unaware that the very foundation of its future had just shifted. The youth program, once dominated by fear and intimidation, would now reflect a new philosophy, discipline guided by wisdom, strength tempered with compassion. The path was set. Elise, quiet yet formidable, would now lead. Elise and Anna were at home that evening, the kitchen light casting soft shadows across the wooden floor. Elise's blue GI lay folded on a chair, the familiar weight of discipline momentarily set aside. A sharp knock at the door made Anna tense. "Who could that be?" she murmured, moving cautiously. Elise stood, small but poised, and walked to the door. Through the peephole, she saw Marcus standing there, his posture hesitant, shoulders slightly hunched. Behind him, a woman she didn't recognize, a sister or perhaps a motherly figure, stood as a mediator. Her expression was calm but firm. Anna opened the door slightly. "Marcus, why are you here?" Marcus swallowed, gaze flicking between Elise and her aunt. I owe you an apology," he said quietly. His voice lacked its former arrogance. "I came to say I'm sorry for what I did, for the way I treated you in class. You didn't deserve it." Elise remained silent, her expression measured. Her eyes studied him, calm but assessing. The woman behind him stepped forward. "He's sincere," she said. "He's realized what he did was wrong. He doesn't want to regain his position, but he wants a chance to help make things right." Marcus nodded, taking a cautious step forward. "I know I can't undo what happened. I just want to contribute now, under your guidance. To help the children, not hurt them." Anna's lips pressed together in doubt. "Why should we trust you?" she asked softly. Her voice carried years of protectiveness, worry threading every syllable. Elise studied Marcus for a long moment. She remembered the fall, the fear, the humiliation he had caused others. And yet, she recalled her father's teachings. True martial arts was not just about strength, but about offering second chances when repentance was genuine. Slowly, she nodded. "If you are serious," she said quietly, "then you will follow the rules. You will learn, and you will put the children first. Not yourself, not pride, not ego." Marcus's eyes brightened with relief and gratitude. "I will," he promised. "I will do whatever it takes." The woman smiled, relieved. Anna exhaled slowly, tension easing. Elise stepped back, letting Marcus enter. The beginning of an unlikely alliance had taken root. One forged not by fear, but by accountability, humility, and the willingness to change. Outside, the night was calm, yet inside, a transformation had begun, a chance for healing and the restoration of integrity. The next morning, Elise's home was quiet but purposeful. Sunlight spilled across the living room, illuminating the neatly folded blue GI on a chair and a small, worn training journal on the table. Anna crossed her arms, skepticism clear in her eyes. "I still don't know if we should let him in," she said, glancing at Marcus, who sat politely on the sofa, hands folded, head lowered. His posture was tentative, cautious. Elise, standing tall despite her small frame, shook her head slowly. "He wants to make amends. That's the first step. We can guide him, teach him what true martial arts means." Her voice was calm, measured. "Strength without wisdom hurts others. Discipline without compassion is empty." Marcus lifted his eyes, gratitude and humility shining through. "I understand," he said softly. "I never realized what I was doing. I want to learn. I want to make this right." Anna's lips pressed tight, but Elise's gaze softened. She remembered her father's words. The measure of a person is not in their mistakes, but in their willingness to correct them. Elise gestured toward the mat corner in the living room, where a small padded area had been set up. "Show me," she said simply. "Not to prove anything, not to show skill. Show me you are ready to change. Control, respect, awareness." Marcus nodded, taking a deep breath. He moved cautiously through simple drills Elise demonstrated. Her eyes never left him, correcting posture, guiding movements, instilling patience. He faltered, stumbled once or twice, but she adjusted him with gentle, firm guidance. After some time, she stepped back, letting him complete a fluid motion without interference. He executed it carefully, aware now not of dominance, but of balance and intention. A small nod from Elise signaled approval. Tears formed in Marcus's eyes, but they were not of shame, of relief. He realized the depth of responsibility he had carried lightly before. Elise had given him the chance to rebuild, to be better, to honor what martial arts truly meant. Anna exhaled slowly, a smile tugging at her lips. I see it now," she said. "You're serious. He's sincere." Marcus's shoulders relaxed, humility settling fully into him. "Thank you," he whispered. "I won't waste this chance." Elise's expression softened. "It's not about thanks. It's about doing what's right. Let the children see that even someone who has been wrong can learn to do right. That is the strength that matters." And in that quiet, sunlit room, the first steps toward healing and atonement were fully underway. 2 weeks later, the gym had transformed. Sunlight poured through newly cleaned windows, warming the polished wood floors. Posters adorned the walls, carrying phrases like "discipline is compassion" and "strength protects, not intimidates." The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and freshly laundered GIs. Elise stood at the front of the room, small but commanding in her blue GI. Her braid hung neatly over one shoulder. Children lined up on the mats, some nervous, some excited, all curious. Parents observed from the side, leaning against the rail, eyes bright with anticipation. Marcus knelt quietly near the back, setting up mats and arranging training equipment. His black GI was clean, his posture subdued. Though no longer the center of attention, he worked with care, demonstrating respect for the new order. "Today, we begin differently," Elise said, voice calm and deliberate. The room grew still. "We start by learning how to move safely, respect our partners, and understand our own strength." Children mimicked her movements, bending, stepping, shifting weight. Elise corrected gently, her hands guiding lightly. Keep your balance. Breathe. Observe, then act. A previously timid student, Mia, trembled slightly as she attempted a basic roll. Elise knelt beside her, demonstrating slowly. It's okay to be afraid. You're learning. Control comes first. Mia's eyes brightened, and she completed the roll successfully. A ripple of applause and quiet cheers followed. Parents exchanged glances, some visibly moved. The energy was different from Marcus's classes. There was no fear, no mockery, only concentration, encouragement, and growth. Marcus observed silently, occasionally assisting a child who struggled. When a mistake was made, he corrected gently, under Elise's guidance, showing patience he had never displayed before. He met Elise's gaze once, nodding slightly, acknowledging her leadership and the shift in his own approach. Elise paused, scanning the room. Remember, she said softly, strength isn't about overpowering someone. It's about helping them stand taller than they thought possible. Today, we lift each other up. The children nodded eagerly. Some repeated the phrase aloud, as if committing it to memory. The gym buzzed, not with fear or anticipation of humiliation, but with the quiet thrill of learning, of mastering skills, of belonging. By the end of the session, smiles were everywhere. Parents whispered their amazement, children laughed, and Marcus, quietly in the corner, wiped down a mat, humbled but learning. A new era had begun, not with confrontation or dominance, but with wisdom, compassion, and disciplined guidance. 6 months later, the sun shone over the town square during the annual community festival. Booths lined the streets, music floated through the air, and laughter mixed with the scent of fresh pastries and flowers. The martial arts program Elise had rebuilt was holding a public demonstration at the center stage. Children in neatly pressed blue GIs formed a line on the mats, facing the small crowd. Their movements were confident, precise, and deliberate, skills learned under Elise's guidance. Each step, roll, and stance carried the calm authority and discipline she had instilled. Elise stood to the side, observing quietly, her braids swinging gently over her shoulder. Marcus knelt near the back, adjusting equipment, cleaning mats, occasionally offering pointers to students. His presence was humble, attentive, and fully supportive, no trace of his former arrogance remaining. The audience leaned forward, watching with admiration. Parents of the children nodded proudly, recognizing the transformation in their children. Once timid and unsure, now confident, strong, and controlled. A young boy named Liam, formerly one of the more skeptical students, stepped forward during a demonstration, leading a small group in a sequence of movements with precision. Martial arts isn't about being the strongest, he said into the microphone, voice steady. It's about helping others, protecting them, standing up for what's right. The crowd erupted into applause. Marcus, standing in the background, nodded, eyes glistening. He had witnessed firsthand the change not just in the children, but in himself. Elise watched quietly, a small, satisfied smile on her lips. She knew that the lessons she taught went far beyond the mat. They had woven into the community, children lifting each other up, parents witnessing integrity, and even those who had once been oppressors learning humility. One of the lead students stepped forward at the end, bowing respectfully to Elise. This program changed my life, he said clearly, and I forgive those who hurt us before. We've learned to rise above fear and cruelty. The crowd murmured in agreement. The words carried weight, echoing not just through the gym, but throughout the town. The message was clear. Respect, courage, and compassion were stronger than intimidation or cruelty. Marcus, quietly kneeling in the background, allowed himself a small, reflective smile. Redemption had taken root. The community had healed. Elise remained at the side, calm yet radiant, understanding that true strength wasn't just skill or victory. It was the courage to lift others up and to build a legacy of integrity that could last generations. A year later, the gym had grown into a bustling hub of activity. Sunlight filtered through large windows, highlighting children practicing under Elise's calm, watchful eye. Posters of discipline, courage, and respect adorned the walls, each bearing her gentle philosophy. Visitors from near and far came to observe. Among them was Master Hanasato, a renowned international martial arts instructor who had traveled thousands of miles to witness Elise's program firsthand. Her sharp eyes scanned the gym, absorbing the techniques, observing the discipline, and noting the quiet control of every student. Elise stood in her blue GI, small yet commanding. She demonstrated a sequence, correcting posture, adjusting grips, and guiding movements. Children responded eagerly, their confidence evident in every motion. Marcus, now fully humbled and respectful, assisted in the background, setting mats, offering encouragement, and quietly learning the new principles of guidance. Master Sato approached after the demonstration, her expression a mixture of astonishment and respect. "I have trained many students, observed countless programs," she said slowly. "But the way you teach, your philosophy, your control, the balance of skill and compassion, it is exceptional, truly remarkable." Elise bowed lightly. "Thank you, Master. My focus is on these children and their growth, not accolades." Sato's eyes softened. "And yet, this will set an example for the world. Others will follow your methods. Your influence could be global." Elise shook her head gently. "Not yet. For now, I remain here. These children, this community, they are my responsibility. Strength is not just to be shown to the world, but to be cultivated where it matters most." Marcus, standing nearby, glanced at Elise, a quiet gratitude in his eyes. He had seen the transformation, not only in the students, but in himself. The lessons of humility, restraint, and compassion were now living in him as well. The gym echoed with the sounds of laughter, encouragement, and the gentle rustle of GIs on mats. Children moved with confidence, teaching one another, lifting each other up. Parents watched with pride, murmuring admiration. The camera of the imagination pans wide, the gym full of joy, discipline, and harmony. Every motion on the mats reflects a philosophy older than most realized, carried forward by a 12-year-old girl with a quiet strength and a legendary lineage. Elise looked around once, eyes sweeping over the thriving, joyful space. She allowed herself a small, serene smile. Strength was not measured by who you could defeat, but by who you could lift, guide, and inspire. The legacy was secured. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive stories.